welcome to the Real Wealth Podcast. I'm Alex Robertson, and in this week's episode, I'm going to be dispelling some myths about wealth. I'm going to be talking about the 10 biggest misconceptions about wealth and wealth creation, and we're going to be dispelling some of those myths and talking about where they come from and why a lot of people perceive wealth in a certain way. So let's get into it. So the first major misconception about wealth that we hear is that wealth is only achieved through luck. And it's probably the most common misconception, that it's just luck or chance or right place, right time that create great wealth for a lot of people. But the reality is, to create great wealth and sustain it over the long term, there's a huge amount of hard work, smart decision making and strategic planning that goes along with that. And I think a good example of why this is absolutely not true is, take lottery winners, for example. I've spoke about this in a previous episode, that there are a huge percentage of lottery winners that actually lose the money over a period of time because they don't have financial intelligence, they don't understand how money works, they get a big pool of money and they think, right, how am I going to spend it? Rather than how am I going to invest it to then create an income which I can then enjoy my life with. So I think that's a common misconception. Luck alone is just simply not enough. And with a lot of people's journey that have achieved great things in life, inevitably at some stage along the journey there has been a bit of luck or something that's went the right way, but luck alone is just simply not enough. I think the other challenge with this is a lot of people only ever see the end result. The media, particularly social media, it focuses on what people have achieved, the end result, these wonderful things, and it fast forwards through a lot of the journey. And if you read a lot of biographies about people that have achieved great wealth or success in life, you'll see that there's been huge amounts of hurdles they've had to overcome. There's very few people that have been gifted money and sustained over a long-term period or just through luck achieved a huge amount of wealth. There's always a story behind people that achieve in life. And that story is usually the most interesting part of their journey. But the media don't cover that because they only want to talk about the billions they've got in the bank, or the millions they've got in the bank, or they drive this car, or they have this watch, or, they've got these material items, this beautiful house. That's what people find interesting. But what is often more interesting, in my view, is the journey that goes along with serious wealth creation. Take a few examples of people that have achieved great wealth. So Oprah Winfrey, she's a billionaire, rise to success through being a media mogul and philanthropist. And a lot of people attribute it to, she's just charismatic, she's got a talent for talk shows, she's been lucky to land that job, and that's created this huge wealth for her. But ultimately, she's had to overcome a huge amount of personal obstacles, from serious poverty in her younger years and personal challenges. And ultimately, Oprah Winfrey's success can be attributed to the fact that she's worked extremely hard, she's very resilient, and she has an ability to connect with her audience that she must have developed over years. That's not just something that she was born with. Yes, some of us have a greater ability to connect with people, but to get to that level where you can create such a strong connection with your audience, it takes a long time. It takes a lot of years to hone that skill. So, people work very hard to achieve what they have in life. Elon Musk's another example. Some people know him for Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, Solar City. He's now bought Twitter. He has all these multi-billion pound companies, but his first company that he achieved great success on was PayPal, and he earned a couple of $100 million from selling that. But he reinvested it in multiple businesses that were all seen as absolute moonshots. Tesla, at a time where electric cars were just not being developed. The main manufacturers didn't want to touch them because there were so many challenges ahead of them. SpaceX, being able to use a rocket more than once. These were things that were seen to be massive moonshots. He took huge risks. He took all of that money that he made from PayPal and reinvested it in these massive moonshots because he's a guy that has a view and a vision of what life is going to be like and the things that need to be addressed. He takes a macro view of the world, understands the direction that we're going in, and he constructs a plan forward and sticks tight to his vision and values, and that's why he's managed to achieve great success in life. It's not in any way, shape or form through luck alone, and maybe he's had a few business decisions that have went his way, but you can't build multiple multi-billion pound companies without having, a huge amount of work, risk taking, relentless pursuit of goals. He faces numerous setbacks on a daily basis trying to create these massive achievements in life, and it just demonstrates that luck alone is never sufficient for serious wealth creation. Okay, so the next most common misconception about wealth is it's a zero-sum game, and by that we mean that some people believe that in order for one person to get wealthy, someone else has to get poorer. However, wealth creation can actually benefit society as a whole. We can generate employment opportunities, we can drive economic growth, and we can improve living standards. Those do not come at the cost of other people becoming poorer. And it's just a misconception on how economics work, a fundamental misconception on that. So you have to understand that if you have a lack of awareness about economics, you can perceive that for someone else to get wealthy, someone else has to get poorer. And it just suggests that there's a fixed amount of wealth in the world. And for someone else's wealth to increase, someone else's must decline. And that's just absolutely not the case. Wealth is being created all the time. And if you have a great idea and you advance the economy, that's creation of wealth, it's creation of jobs. There is not limited amounts of wealth in the world. Wealth is created all the time. And you only have to look at the banking system to understand that money is being created all the time. A lot of the inflation that we're suffering just now is due to all that money that was created by the banks during COVID. They can create money from thin air. A lot of our currency, 90% of the currency that's issued now is digital. It's digital and it goes to the banks. There's only about 3% of money that's actually physically printed in terms of notes now. So money is being created all the time, which ultimately means there is no limitation on wealth. And that view of wealth as a zero-sum game is just completely wrong. And it usually comes from this perception of income inequality and the fact that there is a large gap between the wealthy and the poorer of the population. But that a lot of the time can be driven by the fact that people don't have the financial education that they need to be able to achieve wealth. If you spend every penny that you've got coming in, if you spend every part of your income that you're generated, it doesn't matter how much income you earn, you're still not going to grow any wealth. So it's really important to understand that. A lot of people as well come to this conclusion through things like job competition, so that this idea that there's a job available that's going to be higher salary, higher paid, and someone gets it, so someone else has to lose out. So it creates a sense of scarcity within people, and having a sense of scarcity leads to this mindset of things being a zero-sum game, whereas, when entrepreneurs start a business, they create something new, they create something that can drive the economy and grow the economy further, create more jobs, create more wealth within the economy. It's all about how you use that wealth and how you use your income to build your own wealth pot. Without that financial knowledge at the start, it's going to be very difficult to do that. So the zero-sum game psychology allows people to kind of hide behind their own lack of financial understanding, and kind of soothe themselves that I'm not getting wealthy because this other guy's taking all the money and these rich people are hoarding everything. And the reality is most people aren't getting wealthy because they don't understand the fundamentals of how wealth works. Okay, misconception number 3, that wealth is solely measured by monetary value. And this is a really close subject to my heart because, it's a big part of what we do at the Real Wealth podcast. The question that I ask all of my guests at the end is, what does real wealth mean to you? And it's fundamentally because wealth can never just be measured in monetary values. Even at the most simplistic view of wealth, people can say wealth is about money in the bank. Having millions of pounds in the bank creates wealth. And the reality is it doesn't, because again, to go back to the example of a lottery winner, if you have a certain amount of money in your bank account and you're spending it, then that wealth will run out. What you need is income generating assets that you buy that create a constant flow of money, a constant flow of income. So having a certain monetary value in the bank is just not enough. In fact, it can be the worst thing that you can do is to leave a lot of money in the bank. One, because it's not secure. We spoke about this a lot in previous podcasts. Only £85,000 per institution is protected. If that bank goes down, that money would be gone. But moreover, you're losing significant amount of money with inflation at 8% or over. In reality, probably much higher. If you are not getting an interest on that return, an interest on that money, then ultimately you're going to be losing every year, because the value of that money sitting in the bank account can buy less and less every year. So really important to understand just the most fundamental point, that the wealth is not a monetary value that you have in the bank account. But moreover, it's not just about money. It's whether you're generating it through income, whether you're growing your wealth. Wealth is not just about money. It's a much more holistic concept, because the word wealth derives from well-being, and that goes much broader than just the financial elements. It's talking about personal fulfillment, strong relationships, good health, a sense of purpose. And what you'll find with most of the highest achievers in the world is they have a strong sense of purpose. They're not doing something to get material assets or to become wealthy. They're doing something because they have a vision that they are striving towards. For Elon Musk, that's a vision of transitioning to electric vehicles and stopping the destruction we're doing to our environment. Or at space exploration and the advancement of space exploration. They have a much greater vision than just, I want to make money and I want to get dollars in my bank or pounds in my bank. So, and I think that's a true story for many entrepreneurs when they start out. We maybe all start our journey of wealth creation or building businesses to create a lifestyle, to achieve the material things we want in life, a big house, a big car, lots of holidays. But through the journey of entrepreneurship and the sacrifice that you have to make to build a business and build a successful business, you realize that purpose can be a much greater joy in life. Understanding that you're creating something that may have a generational impact on your family. Those things can be much more personally fulfilling than just money in the bank. So that's a really close point to my heart. The wealth is not solely measured in a monetary value. So next, number 4, wealth is quick and easy. Now, speaking as an entrepreneur who's been in business for 5 years, I can say there is nothing quick or easy about it. Even our journey from 0 to 200 properties in 2.5 years might seem like a quick route to wealth. It's not. There's a huge amount of challenges, and even now with interest rates rising, we are having significant challenges with our buy-to-let portfolio to ensure that we get the most out of it and that it's profitable and that we can continue to grow and sustain it over the long term. Nothing is ever easy, and the amount of stress that we put ourselves under during those early years trying to do all those big deals to grow our portfolio exponentially, it was a huge amount of work, huge amount of sacrifice. And in that period, we were up at 4 a.m. most mornings working on stuff. We were also trying to build other businesses in the background, and it's taken 3 to 4 years for most of those businesses to now start to perform. Our Real Property Scotland business, which is now a combination of property investment training, deal sourcing. We have the auction house now, Town and Country Property Auctions. We're operating in Scotland. We have the estate agency. That business has got quite a few arms to it, but it's only in the last year that business has started to become a very interesting business. For the 2 previous years, it was hard work. It took a long time to get traction. These are not simple things. There was probably challenging times where we had to finance the business in the short term. You're taking a lot of risk at the start to grow something. You're having to invest a lot of money with no guarantee that it's going to come back to you and that it's eventually going to take a hold. So there is no quick and easy route to achieve great wealth, and you may say again the lottery is an option to achieve great wealth if you're lucky enough to win it, but the reality is sustaining it in the long term when you haven't learned the skills to build it to start with, it's unlikely that you're going to be able to have the skills to maintain it in the long term. So let's talk about a bit more on that with some examples. So let's talk about Amazon. Jeff Bezos, obvious one. Jeff Bezos founded Amazon in 1994. It took many years of hard work, strategic decision making, continuous innovation for Amazon to become what it is today. Now, Jeff Bezos told his board in the very early years of Amazon that I'm going to make a loss for the next 10 years because I'm driven on this goal of what I can see Amazon is going to be, and I need to build the infrastructure to support it. So for Amazon to be this massive company that's distributing parcels all over the world, it had to create a huge amount of infrastructure. Anybody that's seen these big Amazon fulfillment centers, they're huge. Billions spent developing those. And in the short term, it had to be funded. The company was making huge losses in the early years, but in the long term, it's now seriously profitable. And he has seen the benefits of those risks that he took in the early stages. Another common example of this is J.K. Rowling, the author of Harry Potter. She faced a huge amount of rejection from many publishers before she was finally successful. It took her many years of spending a huge amount of time to create this piece of art, this book, only to be constantly rejected. But she believed in her vision so much that she persevered. And in the end, obviously, the Harry Potter franchise has made her a huge amount of money. Warren Buffett, legendary investor. He's known for his long-term investment strategy, so he didn't get wealthy quickly. He got wealthy over a period of decades, and he also put his wealth down to good genes and the fact that he's lived so long, because his investments have grown year on year, and his wealth creation has not been a short-term play. So I think there's a few examples of various individuals that have had to play the long game to create wealth, and that's it. Generally, wealth is a compounding game, a game of long-term gains, and it's always been hugely important for any business that's trying to grow, or anybody that's trying to grow the wealth, that they take a long-term view on investment. No short-term plays are not sustainable in the long term. So that is number 4. We're going to head on to number 5. Number 5 major misconception on wealth is only highly educated people can create wealth. And whilst no doubt there is a value to education, it's not the sole determining factor for wealth creation. Many successful entrepreneurs and multimillionaires have done so without any sort of formal education or any serious advanced education. So, I think some of the most famous college dropouts: Mark Zuckerberg dropped out of Harvard, Steve Jobs dropped out of Reed College, Tiger Woods dropped out of college, Bill Gates dropped out of Harvard, Ralph Lauren dropped out of college, Michael Dell dropped out of UT after 2 semesters. Evan Williams, the creator of Twitter, he managed 3 semesters in university before he dropped out. It's quite common for people that achieve great wealth to not have a formal university education. So to think that you're limited by education, and I've spoke about this a lot in the early podcasts, that this perception that the school and university education system is the building blocks to anybody's future success is just wrong. Because they don't teach you anything about financial intelligence. They don't teach you about how to manage your money and grow your wealth. Those are not things that are in the interests of the government to be putting into the school curriculums, because they need people to work. They need people to come out and be consumers of the world. So you are buying more out of the economy than you're actually putting back in, and you're never creating any serious wealth. They're only interested in you out there working so they can collect your taxes. So it's important to understand that education is not the be-all and end-all. I think it's more important to educate yourself on the things that matter in terms of wealth creation, in terms of financial intelligence. for me, the sum total of this section is really just that education and formal education is not the be all and end all of wealth creation. In fact, it's not even that important. I even go back to a few of my friends who done quite well out of school. Most of them went straight into the workforce, and even, you know, my experience, I went through university, I trained as a chartered accountant, so I did go through that educational process. I don't feel like I learned much until I started working, even in terms of finance. You know, I was handed a set of documents to prepare a set of financial statements my first week in my job with this new company straight out of university, and I had to study on how to do it, because, you know, I may have had understood the concepts from university, but the practical applications of those concepts were not there, because I hadn't been in the workforce, I hadn't been learning. So you can find a lot of benefit for people getting into the workforce earlier, not having that formal education, and they have a lot more practical life skills. And that is really when you start learning, when you get out into the world, you really start to learn the core skills that are going to take you forward in life. So yeah, education is definitely not everything, particularly a formal education. It is important to be constantly improving your knowledge and skills, but that doesn't have to be in a formal educational setting. It can be through listening to podcasts, listening to audiobooks, going down the rabbit hole on subjects that you're passionate about. Okay. Misconception number 6, wealthy people are inherently greedy or unethical. Now, this is a massive misconception that wealthy people have attained their wealth through unethical means by taking advantage of others. And obviously there are cases out there where this has happened, and they are the ones that tend to make the news. So I think that's why a lot of people have this concept. And just, it's easier to sit back if you haven't created any wealth in your life and say, well, you know, they've only achieved this because they're more educated, because they had the right luck, because they're unethical and they've left their personal values behind to do that. It's simply not the case. And actually, I think as you see people go forward in life and achieve more, what tends to happen is they have very strong personal values. If you're creating a business, you're going to be approached with 200 decisions in a day to make. If you don't have strong personal values and strong ethics and strong views of what this business should be and how it should serve its clients, then again, you're going to make the wrong mistake. You're going to make a few mistakes. You're going to make the wrong decisions, and it's a dangerous place to go. So I would say for any really successful entrepreneur, you generally see they have very strong personal values and they stick to them. They may not align with your personal values. Everybody has their own sets of personal values, and trying to get everybody to align with your personal values is the most futile thing in the world. I was listening to a podcast from John DeMartini, who probably is one of the most advanced specialists on understanding the brain, understanding how we work as humans. And, you know, he talks a lot about personal values and the fact that, you know, trying to translate your personal values onto someone else, and the obvious example is a situation of a husband and wife where, you know, one of them may have a certain set of personal values and the other one has a very different set of personal values. If they're constantly trying to align each other in their own personal values, it's unlikely to lead to a successful relationship in the long term. You have to respect other people's personal values, and when there is a conflict, there needs to be some sort of resolution process. But personal values for me are something that's hugely important in building a successful business, because if you don't have a clear vision of what you're trying to achieve and how you want to do it, very difficult to achieve in life. Okay, number 7. Wealth creation is a solitary endeavour, so it's something that you do on your own. And this is an obvious one, because, you know, when you think about big companies in the world, you associate them with one individual. So Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, Virgin, Richard Branson, Tesla, Elon Musk, you know, Microsoft, Bill Gates, Dell Computers, Michael Dell. it's an obvious thing to then think these people have built these companies on their own, and you know they do this all themselves. Now, I know from my personal experience in building our business, I couldn't have done it on my own. I don't have the skill set. I don't have the complete set of skills that are required to build a business. You know, my skills are not in sales. They're not in, you know, aggressive growth. You know, I'm much more analytical. I like to keep control of the numbers and keep control of the business that way, whereas my business partner Laurie is very much a sales orientated, driven, serious growth type of guy, and somewhere in the middle we balance each other out really well. So I know that I couldn't have achieved success as an entrepreneur in business without that counterbalance, without that support system that I get from my business partner. And a lot of people are like that. And even the guys that you see, the guys that we've mentioned there, that have built the biggest companies in the world, you'd be surprised at how little of their companies they actually own, because there are huge amount of input from other people at the start that have got minority shareholdings. There's huge amount of input from people that have financed the company along the way, venture capitalists. It all leads to a situation where, you know, Mark Zuckerberg is not responsible entirely for Facebook. There's been other players involved in creating that company to where it is just now. And in fact, Mark only owns 13.6% of Facebook. Elon Musk only owns 13% of Tesla. Warren Buffett only owns 34% of Berkshire Hathaway. Bill Gates now only owns about 1.3% of Microsoft. Michael Dell is probably one of the largest shareholders of these founders out of everybody on this list. He still owns 52% of Dell. That's a very unusual situation because there's so many other people that need to be involved in the creation of that business to get it to the stage that it's at, and inevitably they get a share of the company as things move forward. So it's understanding that whilst you may have these figureheads for a lot of businesses, that wealth creation is not a solitary endeavour. And I think it's really important that if you're thinking about starting a business with a business partner, you should not, it's not beneficial to have the same skill set and the same mentality. And people usually go towards other people that have the same value system as them, that have the same interests, that have the same skills. It's the worst thing that you could do in business. You know, very early on in our journey, one of my closest friends wanted to do a property joint venture with me, and I said no because we're too similar. You know, our values are too same. We've got the same skill set, we've got the same view on life, and that's not what I needed to succeed. I needed someone who was very different to me, and that has been a big part of the success we've achieved at Root Group, is that we're very different. So Laurie and I are very different characters, and then Connor came in, and Connor has a nice counterbalance to the two of us. But at every stage of that, you know, there's been a view of, right, what skills are missing and how can we plug them, and that whole balance and counterbalance of skill sets can really move a business forward. So it's definitely not a solitary endeavour, entrepreneurship and wealth creation. Okay, number 8. We'll get through it now. Wealth is limited to a select few. People believe that wealth is only attainable for the privileged. A few of those that are born into wealth, that wealth sustains wealth. Well, it's true that a lot of people do have an advantage, certainly from their upbringing and the money that they've perhaps been gifted, or the odd trust fund here or there. There are so many examples of people who have come from nothing to achieve great financial success. And in reality, I think the statistics around second generational wealth are pretty scary. You know, it's estimated that around about 70% of wealthy families will lose their wealth by the second generation, and 90% of them will lose their wealth by the third generation. So there is this concept of one generation creates it, one generation spends it, and the third generation loses it. And you know, it's a common analogy. And that's it, because ultimately, if you don't learn the fundamentals of wealth, and there's no guarantee that just because you're born into a wealthy family, you know, you may be born into parents that are too busy to support you through your educational journey in life and help you understand finances and how all that works. And, by the time you get to the point where you inherit the family fortune, you just don't have the skills to be able to sustain it. And wealth can be a massive burden if you don't know how to manage it. So, there are definitely a lot of examples where wealth is just not limited to a select few, and wealth does also not tend to stay with the same family in the long term without some serious structures around it, i.e., putting it into trust and having very clear rules and regulations on how the funds can be accessed and spent over a period of time. But again, that is only likely to be able to sustain for a generation or two before things change, because if you're not constantly investing and growing wealth, then usually it's depleting and it's on its way out. Okay, misconception number 9. Wealth guarantees happiness. And again, this goes back to one of the earlier misconceptions that wealth is just a monetary value. There are much more to life than just wealth and just money, and happiness is obviously a massive part of that. Whilst financial security can improve your overall well-being, and wealth can create some really good fleeting moments of happiness through experiences and material items that you can't otherwise get without wealth, it's not going to sustain it in the long term. There are other factors in your life that are going to have a much greater impact on your happiness and well-being in the long term, such as, are you fulfilled? Do you get up every day with a purpose? If you have a lot of money in the bank and you have no need to work, and you have no direction in life, or you have nothing that gives you fulfillment, that's likely to be a very unhappy place. And you hear about a lot of people who sell their business. And I think Stephen Bartlett talked about this, of that day of having sold his business, and this big lump of cash lands in his bank account, and just feeling completely directionless because all of the purpose he'd had in his life to that point was building this business. What do I do now? I need to regroup, I need to reset, I need to think about what my life priorities are, what I want to achieve from the rest of my life. That can be a scary place for a lot of people to be, especially for a lot of people that have been on the entrepreneurial journey because they've had a purpose for so long, building this thing that they've committed their life to. If you don't have strong relationships, if you don't have good health, those are things that are much, much higher on the list in terms of affecting your happiness than money or wealth is. Wealth generally extrapolates traits and issues that are already inherent in you. So if you have underlying mental issues, or you have underlying unhappiness or lack of direction, wealth is just going to extrapolate that. And how many stories have we heard of people who, movie stars who have great success early in life and then end up getting lost through drugs and alcohol and lack of direction, where the world is at their feet. They have all this money, and ultimately they lose everything because they develop a drug addiction or alcohol addiction, or they haven't dealt with the underlying purpose of life, how to achieve fulfillment, and really what is going to drive their happiness, and root out those issues that are not that are likely to affect your happiness in the long term. The reality is, happiness comes from the now. Happiness comes from being present and creating a life where you can take joy from every day. And there was a story I heard recently on the Joe Rogan podcast from Peter Attia, and he was saying anytime his kids are going crazy around the house, anytime they're turning the place over and being feral kids as toddlers tend to be, he puts himself in this mindset where he says, imagine you're 8 years old and you have an opportunity to go back in time to this moment, and it's the only moment that you're going to have again with your kids at this age. And just try and reset the way that you look at things and understand the value of the time that you have right now with your family around you. And those types of mindset hacks can help you be much more present and take much more value from your life. Another thing I've found more recently is regular gratuity of just listing all the things that you're thankful for, all the things in your life that are, truly bringing you happiness, all the things in your life that make a difference to you every day. And that process will genuinely help you be a happier, healthier, more rounded individual. Gratuity is a massive tool for me and helps me stay present and thankful for everything that I have. And it's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and forget what you have to be thankful for, because someone cut you up on the traffic on the way in, or the dog ran out on the road today and you had to chase it, or there can be all sorts of things that happen in day-to-day life that can stress you or create anxiety or flip the switch in your head to this is a bad day. But you can easily bring it back when you put things into perspective like that. Okay, final one from me, final misconception is wealth creation requires sacrificing personal values. This is another commonly held misconception, and it really comes back to what I said earlier in one of the other in one of the other sections. We talked about the fact that you have to sacrifice personal values. You have to be unethical in some way to create wealth, and it's absolutely not the case. It's an absolute misconception for me, and obviously with everything there are exceptions, but personal values, as I've already said, for me are intrinsically linked to success in the long term of any business. When you have a founder that has a clear vision and strategy and understanding of what they want the business to be, that will keep everybody else aligned on what we're trying to achieve. And without that, many businesses can get lost, make bad strategic decisions, or take the wrong path, which can lead to destruction in the long term for a lot of entrepreneurs. Strong visions and value are precisely the thing that create great success. And I'm drawn to this movie that I watched the other night. It was Lamborghini, the Man Behind the Legend, and it was about Ferruccio Lamborghini, who was the founder of Lamborghini cars. Obviously, Lamborghini, a lot of people might not know it, they started building tractors, and there's a story where Ferruccio Lamborghini had created all this wealth through building these tractors, and he bought a lot of fancy cars because he liked his Ferraris, and he had an ongoing problem with the Ferraris that the clutch would give out. And what he did is he exchanged the clutch in his Ferrari with one of his tractor clutches, which were almost identical, and the problem went away. And when he tried to approach Enzo Ferrari about this, to try and help him or come up with some sort of partnership, Enzo Ferrari wouldn't see him. And this led to Ferruccio deciding to go into car manufacturing business and created his first Lamborghini. He had to create the car in a hugely short period of time. But what they achieved was this phenomenal launch car that launched within a matter of months and created a huge buzz about the car industry and put Ferrari in the shadows for a little bit. And the reason why they were able to achieve that is Ferruccio Lamborghini had a very strong vision of what he wanted that car to be based on his personal values. And there was several designs that he knocked back. There was compromises he was continually asked to make on the design because of the short period of time that they had to design the car, and he refused point blank to compromise on anything, and they always found the solution to make it work. So I think that is a really good example of the importance of a visionary leader who has strong personal values in the process of achieving great things. So I think that's enough from me. That has been the 10 biggest misconceptions in wealth creation. I hope that's been useful. I've been Alex Robertson, and this has been the Real Wealth Podcast, and I hope you'll join us on this wealth journey.